and welcome to Lunchtime News here on TV1. You're joining me, David Paldano. Now, before we head into your stories in more detail, let's first take a look at your headlines this afternoon. Cabinet approval granted to import organic fertilizer. Assistance sought from Australia to assess the environmental damage caused by Express Pearl blaze. 2,500 rupees allowance for preschool teachers from today. 5,000 rupees allowance to be doled out from tomorrow. COVID-19 variants to be given Greek alphabet names to avoid stigma. Now taking a look at one of your headline-making stories, Sri Lanka is expecting Australia's support in evaluating the environmental damage caused by two vessel-related accidents in the recent past. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa had made a request to this effect during a meeting yesterday.
Australian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, David Hawley, had met with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the Presidential Secretariat yesterday. During the meeting, attention had been drawn to the potential of elevating Sri Lanka as a centre of higher education in the South Asian region. The discussion had also revolved around establishing an export market in Sri Lanka, targeting several countries including India and Middle Eastern countries. The High Commissioner noted that a consignment of medical equipment donated by the Australian government will arrive on Thursday.
Now in more local news, Cabinet approval has been granted to purchase organic fertilizer from local and foreign suppliers to fulfill the fertilizer requirement for the Maha harvesting season. Now this will be done in order to promote the use of organic fertilizer for agricultural products.
On the 27th of April, Cabinet granted approval to suspend the importation of chemical fertilizer, pesticides and weedicides to promote organic fertilizer. At present, only 27 local organic fertilizer suppliers have been licensed by the Fertilizer Secretariat. Taking into consideration the production capacity of 10 local manufacturers, plans have been drawn up to provide locally produced fertilizer for 224,000 hectares of farmlands in the Maha season. Further, the Minister of Agriculture had pointed out to Cabinet the possibility of producing organic fertilizer through farmers for another 100,000 hectares of farmland. Yesterday, the Cabinet had decided to import organic fertilizer required for 500,000 hectares of paddy lands for the 2021-2022 Maha season through state-owned fertilizer companies and to distribute it through the Agrarian Services Department. Further, Cabinet has greenlit the importation of organic fertilizer required for 600,000 hectares to cultivate other crops pursuant to the recommendations of organic fertilizer research institutes and to import them through licensed corporations. Specialized fertilizer required for non-edible ornamental plants and other plants would be allowed to be imported based on the recommendations of research institutes under a permit system.
There
is a rumor circulating that this organic fertilizer is produced by mixing urea to waste material in China and thereafter imported. Information has surfaced that a businessman aligned with the government is also a member of this committee. Who will the tender be awarded to and where will the organic fertilizer be imported from?
කොහෙන්ද මේ කාබනික පොහොර ආනයනය කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ කියන කාරණාව දැනගන්න කැමතියි.
මම හිතනවා මට සරලව කියන්න තියෙන්නේ මේ gossip ගැන කතා කරන්න. ඉතින් මට අමාරුයි.
Simply put, this is gossip. I cannot respond to gossip. These are baseless questions. I am privy to it. If there is a challenge, the government is geared to face it. A committee has been appointed and the government has decided to import organic fertilizer. It is unfit to ask such unrelated questions in a forum such as this. This is a stern decision taken by the country. The rumors are part of a larger attempt to sabotage this plan.
ඒකට බාධා කරන්නට ඒ කඩා කප්පල් කරන්නට ඉතාමත්ම සංවිධානාත්මක ලෙස කරන වැඩපිළිවෙලක් හැටියට මම දකින්නේ මේකට දෙන්න තියෙන උත්තරය ඒකයි.
Meanwhile, a tense situation arose when fertilizer was distributed at the Kandapula Agrarian Services Centre in Noor earlier today. 300 farmers had been issued tokens to collect 50 kilograms of fertilizer each from the Agrarian Services Centre. However, the police had to intervene after more than 800 farmers gathered at the location in violation of quarantine regulations while hampering the distribution process. Meanwhile, journalists raised questions behind the reason of Sri Lanka's purchase of the Sinopharm vaccine at $15 a dose. This was during a media briefing held today.
Sinopharm ennatha Bangladesh.
Bangladesh has granted approval to purchase the Sinopharm jab at $10 a dose. However, Sri Lanka is purchasing the vaccine at $15. What is the government's stance on purchasing these jabs at a higher rate?
Sinopharm ennatha වැඩි මිලකට මිලදී ගැනීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් රජයේ මතය මොකක්ද මැතිතුමනි?
මේ එන්නත ගණනට තියෙන්නේ
This vaccine is sold at varying rates between $18 and $40 based on discussions with the manufacturers. If an issue has occurred in our procurement process, then we can be challenged on that decision.
ක්‍රමය තුළ යම් කිසි අඩුපාඩුවක් වෙලා තිබෙනවා නම් ඒ සම්බන්ධ ඕනෑම අභියෝගයක් ඉදිරිපත් කරන්නට පුළුවන්.
චීනය ලංකාවට දුන්න මිල
The Sri Lankan government cannot comment on whether China had overpriced the vaccine while selling them to Sri Lanka and the rate at which it was being sold to Bangladesh. Only the Chinese government can comment on that.
කළ හැක්කේ චීන ආණ්ඩුවට පමණමයි.
ඊයේ මහනුවර ප්‍රදේශයේ
The Sputnik vaccine had been administered in Kandy yesterday, but the form read that only one dose would be administered. The Health Ministry was not aware of this as well. On whose instructions was this done?
මතද ඒ වගේ පත්‍රිකාවේ සඳහන් කරලා තිබ්බේ මාත්‍රාවක් ලබා ගැනීම ප්‍රමාණවත් කියලා. මේකට එක්ස්පර්ට් කමිටි එකක් දැම්මේ.
An expert committee decided that one dose of the Sputnik vaccine would be sufficient to stem the spread of the virus in the country. This decision was made based on that recommendation. Earlier, it was said that the second dose of the Sinopharm vaccine must be administered within 3 weeks. They increased it up to 12 weeks. Some countries are administering the third dose as well. This process is not static. The recommendations issued 6 months ago are not applicable now. Accordingly, steps are being taken to control the spread of the pandemic in the country. We have taken those decisions based on the recommendations of medical experts.
තමයි මේ වැඩපිළිවෙල මේ වැඩපිළිවෙලට විශේෂඥ වෛද්‍ය උපදෙස් අනුවයි ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙලා තියෙන්නේ.
Police conducted inspections to monitor any misuse of letters issued for essential service sector employees to travel to work when travel restrictions are in effect. The inspection of vehicles that took place at Roadblocks had caused traffic congestions in certain areas. "43 COVID-19 deaths were reported in the country yesterday. Here is a look at the current COVID-19 situation in the country. Health authorities said that 4 of the confirmed COVID-19 deaths had occurred yesterday. The other 39 deaths had occurred between the 20th and the 30th of April. The deceased included a 24-year-old female from Rattota, a 35-year-old female from Kuruvita, and a 36-year-old female from Uhumiya. The cause of death for most of the deceased individuals has been identified as pneumonia caused due to COVID-19. Meanwhile, the epidemiology unit of the Health Ministry has said that Sri Lanka's COVID-19 death toll currently stands at 1,484. Official figures indicate that 2,882 infections have been detected yesterday, raising the total tally of infected cases up to 186,334. 151,740 individuals have recovered from the virus, while 33,183 infected individuals are under medical care. Sri Lanka's Cabinet of Ministers has granted approval for the construction of the new Sri Lanka Police Headquarters in Attidiya Road, Dehiwala. Now, according to a document released by the Department of Government Information, the new police headquarters will be moved to a 14-acre land located in Bellantora Junction in Attidiya Road. The police headquarters is currently operating in 3 buildings which are more than 100 years old, connecting York Street and Chaitya Road, and also has rented buildings due to the lack of space at the premise. It added that the initial approval was granted by the Cabinet to construct the police headquarters complex in Mirihana. However, the necessary steps were not taken in accordance with the Cabinet decision. Now, keeping up with more local news, the government has also decided to increase the monthly allowance offered to preschool teachers from 250 rupees to 2,500 rupees. 25,000 preschool teachers would be entitled to receive the allowance. Meanwhile, Co-Cabinet spokesperson Udaya Gamampilla has said that the 5,000 rupee allowance would be provided from tomorrow. Individuals who have lost their modes of income due to the travel restrictions will be offered the 5,000 rupee allowance from tomorrow. If payouts received by the beneficiaries of existing government allowances such as Samruddhi are less than 5,000 rupees, steps will be taken to cover up the balance. For example, if a person receives 2,000 rupees, then that individual will be offered 3,000 rupees. The allowance of 5,000 rupees will be distributed among others as usual. Harbour Master of the Colombo Port, Captain Nirma Silva, has made another clarification today on the fire which broke out on board the Express Pearl vessel while it was in anchorage off the port of Colombo.
යමෙක් ආපුවම ආධාර ඉල්ලලා ආපුවම ඒක අපිට වගකීමක් ඇවිල්ලා පැය 23කට විතර පස්සේ තමයි.
It is our responsibility to assist a vessel in distress. The fire had truly broken out after nearly 23 hours since they anchored at the outer harbour. We managed to control that with the resources we possess. The SLPA deployed 3 tugs and controlled the fire. Unfortunately, due to a low pressure system which formed in the Bay of Bengal, a cyclonic storm occurred. Because of strong winds, the fire began to spread faster. That is how it spread out of control. I have been working at the port for 16 years. The inclement weather accompanied by strong winds occurred around 2 p.m. on the 24th. By 26th morning, the wind speed had peaked. During that 39-hour window, we were only able to carry out operations of the port for about 3 hours because the gantry cranes at the port shut off when faced with heavy winds. For around 35 hours, we were unable to carry out even the usual operations of the port following strong winds. This is the longest time operations of the port have been hampered in recent history. It is unfortunate, but by now the fire has been largely controlled and only small flames can be observed. The vessel has not cooled down enough for anyone to board it.
තාම කාටවත් නැවට නගින්න තරම් තත්ත්වයක් නැහැ. තව ටිකක් කූල් ඩවුන් වෙන්න ඕනේ.
Multiple elephants were injured following incidents which occurred in several places of the country.
Wildlife officers began the treatment of an elephant that had been caught in a trap in the Madirigiri Vavar in Polonnarua. Officers had visited the location to treat the injured elephant after being notified about the matter by locals. The right front limb of the elephant had been injured due to the trap. The elephant, aged 25, is 7.5 feet in height. Wildlife and veterinarian officers took several measures to treat the injured animal. Wildlife officers began treating a wild elephant that had been injured in a shooting in the Tumbikulam Reserve in Bellankadavala. According to the wildlife officers, the treatment had been performed after tranquilizing the animal. Veterinarian officers said the elephant is in a stable condition.
A tipper truck had toppled into the Viana Canal in Mahiyangane as the driver had attempted to evade a wild elephant in the area. Officials said the sluice gates of the Minipe Amuna and Loggaloya must be closed to retrieve the vehicle. The Mahaveli Development Authority said the process would require around 12 hours.
The police special task force seized 129 kilograms of Kerala cannabis that had been hidden at a residence in Kolonnawa.
According to the police, a 37-year-old resident of Demmutugoda had been arrested during the raid. The suspect and the stock of Kerala cannabis has been handed over to the Police Narcotics Bureau. Meanwhile, a suspect had been arrested during a raid on a cannabis cultivation in Surya Weber. 3,000 Kerala cannabis plants have been destroyed during the raid. Further, a 40-year-old had been arrested with 10 grams of heroin in Ambalangoda, while 33-year-old had been arrested with 4 grams of heroin in Mount Lavinia.
Several religious programs were organized at Sri Lankan embassies and temples overseas in line with Vesak Poya.
A special program to celebrate Vesak Poya was organized at the Jetavanaramaya temple in France. The event took place under the patronage of the chief incumbent of the Viharaya, Venerable Kongastheni Anandathera, and the Adhikarana Sanganayaka of France, Venerable Murungasyaye Gnanisaratera. A Vesak program was also held at the Lankarama temple in Brisbane. In addition to the Sri Lankan Buddhist devotees living in Brisbane, Australian, Filipinos, Thai and Myanmar devotees too participated for the program. Besides the traditional Poya Day religious activities, the event included many vibrant Vesak decorations, a special Perahara and a cultural event comprised of various hymns. Yashodhara Sinhala School and Dhamma School students, teachers and their parents participated in the event. The Vesak celebrations, organized by the Sri Lankan Embassy in Lebanon, took place in the Sri Lankan Embassy premises in Lebanon. The Sri Lankan Ambassador to Lebanon, Shani Karunaratne, and the Sri Lankan community in Lebanon participated in the event.
And with that, we wrap lunchtime news here on TV1. For more news, log on to our award-winning website, that is www.newsfirst.lk. For the Newsfirst team, I'm David Paldada. Take care.